Fox 5 and Hot 97 present Street Soldiers with Lisa Evers.
I'm so glad you're joining me for this episode of Street Soldiers on the life and legacy of Chadwick Boseman. He inspired millions of people around the world as the Black Panther superhero and also inspired many with his roles as African-American icons. Now we're learning about his real-life heroism and his courage and determination as he battled a deadly disease.
I never freeze.
When Chadwick Boseman exploded onto the screen as King T'Challa in the Black Panther, the millions of fans who saw his galvanizing performance had no idea he was battling a very aggressive form of colon cancer. His death at 43 came as a horrible surprise, even to some who'd worked closely with him on movie sets. His example of courage and determination are having a powerful effect beyond his acting roles, says Clayton Davis, Film Awards editor at Variety.
I think once you go deeper into an individual household anywhere in the country, you're going to find a different takeaway. It's going to surround courage and strength, regarding health. You're going to see people that see resilience in the face of adversity.
From his roles in Marshall, playing the first African-American Supreme Court Justice, Thurgood Marshall, to James Brown, and his breakthrough portrayal of Jackie Robinson's fight for equality in a segregated society in 42, Chadwick Boseman brought an intensity and rare consciousness to each role. In Black Panther, he insisted the characters speak with African accents for authenticity, not American ones.
I think that attention to detail and that respect for African culture that Chad brought into it is just one of the many things that made him such an incredible person to work with.
Boseman made 7 films in the last 4 years of his life, an unusually high number for any actor, especially one battling a life-threatening disease. He's left a health legacy with his brave fight, raising awareness of a disease that disproportionately affects African-American men, says Dr. Charles Thompson III.
There are higher incidences of colorectal cancer in all men, but specifically in the Black community, there's a higher incidence of colorectal cancer among Black men compared to Black women.
The Black Panther role is the one that will continue to change lives, says Chuck Creekmur. Black boys now have a superhero to fuel their most ambitious dreams.
I put the Black Panther and T'Challa and Chadwick at the top of the pile. I mean, it's almost like for Italians, they had Rocky and we have the Black Panther. So it's everything. Chadwick was a beautiful vessel in which, some would say Marvel and, Disney, but I think it was God's work that put him in front of us in that way.
Chadwick Boseman was unique in many ways, both as an actor and as a man. Let's find out what our panel has to say. Joining me for this conversation is Clayton Davis. He's the Film Awards editor for Variety. Clayton, great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Lisa.
Thank you so much. Also joining us is Chuck Creekmur. He's the CEO and co-founder of allhiphop.com. Chuck, great to have you with us.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. Also with us is David Betancourt. He's a Washington Post reporter on comic book culture. David, great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. Clayton, when you look at the films that Chadwick Boseman starred in and the roles that he played, what kind of common thread do you see throughout all of those?
I see a person who took the opportunities that were afforded to him and wanted to make sure that grappling with a disease that none of us knew of or knew that he had, he didn't want that to be the conversation that surrounded his career. He wanted to make a bigger impact than what he went out on in terms of, what took him out of this world. He saw the value and he saw what he meant to the Black community more so than just being T'Challa or being James Brown or being Thurgood Marshall. He wanted to be a symbol for future generations to come up, be inspired, and want to actually get into the industry. And not a lot of those opportunities are afforded to young Black boys and girls out there. And he saw himself as bigger. His symbolization was bigger than the movies he was in.
All right, Chuck, in terms of his position and what he meant, especially to Black men and Black boys, tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, he meant everything to Black men and Black boys. There's some obvious ones, obviously, with regard to the Black Panther That movie was so much more than just a movie. I really do consider it a movement that harkened back to our true roots in Africa, and it allowed us to celebrate not only the strength and power that comes from the motherland, I should say, but it also represents the strength I think that we all have innately. Wakanda is a fictional country, but hypothetically speaking, or even an alternative reality without oppressive forces, it could be a true reality. And then there are all his other roles, which all represented strong men. But more than that, I think Chadwick himself, his life represented him as that sort of classic man that we can all look to and follow. And the words that he spoke, the speeches that he spoke, and also some of the moves he made in his career, turning certain roles down because they were stereotypical, and really taking a stand when he had everything to lose in those positions.
Exactly. David, in terms of the superhero Black Panther, because he did so many amazing roles, but it was really Black Panther that galvanized the attention of millions of people around the world. What is it about the Black Panther as superhero that resonates with everybody?
It was a combination of a lot of things. Probably the most important is there are only so many well-known Black superheroes to begin with. Of the few that are around, Black Panther is by far and away the top Black superhero of all time. And it's always been that. You talk to anyone who reads comic books or is into the culture, they will tell you who's the best Black. There's a debate. You've got people who are Spider-Man people, you've got people who are Batman people. There's no debate when it comes to the Black superheroes. It's the Black Panther, and then there's everyone else. And it's always been that way, which is why the casting was so important. Marvel Studios knew they needed someone who could take on not just the role, but the responsibility and the anticipation from the fans that came with it. And Nate Moore has said many times, Nate Moore is a producer of Black Panther, the one Black producer at Marvel Studios. He said they looked very heavily at Chadwick's role in 42 when he played Jackie Robinson and how well he handled that responsibility. And his performance there let them know that he could handle taking on what was really the role of his career.
No, absolutely. Clayton, in terms of the roles, take us through some of the pivotal roles.
I mean, we just mentioned 42 playing Jackie Robinson. I think that was the first time I really saw that there was something in him that was deeper than just the aesthetic of the biopic role. Playing Jackie Robinson is a very baity role. They weren't just propping him up for Oscar attention or anything like that. There was something deeper. He saw the importance of playing those roles. Going into Thurgood Marshall, and taking on, the first Supreme Court justice of African American descent. He just really saw the role that he played in giving education to the Black community in a way that we don't have access to. Chadwick wanted a 5-year-old boy sitting at home to see T'Challa and say, I want to be like him.
Plus, it was such a physical role too.
That's when you know that what he was doing was so much greater than, we're all sad and it's devastating to that part of the community, but he gave us a gift that we didn't ask for, nor did we think we deserved. Like, now he will be a symbol for generations to come. Black Panther will never be seen in the same way that it was seen.
No, absolutely.
That's going to be seen now.
Chuck, there was tremendous, because you and Clayton did the show with us a couple of years ago when it first came out, and I can't remember when there was ever so much excitement about a film, and when there was just so much anticipation in terms of the Black Panther, in terms of what it meant, and hip hop culture embraced him. Chadwick, the cast, it was more than a movie; it was really a movement. What do you think it was about Chadwick that he brought? Because obviously he was the leader of that whole thing. What do you think it was about him in particular that brought it, that resonated so much, especially with the hip hop culture?
Chadwick brought that regal side of things to the Black Panther and to that role of T'Challa. We oftentimes celebrate in film, TV, sort of the villain, we almost celebrate the villain. And that's why Killmonger was such a popular character as well in the movie, but he brought class and grace and sophistication to that role, and he was loved in that way. And so for me, you know, I still have multiple items still from that period of time. I have all my
Oh yeah.
I got everything. I got everything. And I think he brought that, and I don't think we could have at that point in time, I don't think there was another person that could have played that role in that way, and really laid it down for, like Clayton said, generations and generations.
For people to come. David, in terms of the comic book culture, you know, you're the expert on this, but it seems to be very particular, very specific, very intense. And if this movie, if Black Panther had not been portrayed with a certain authenticity, all of that might have, you know, there might have been a backlash or whatever, instead of all of this huge tidal wave of support. What do you think of in terms of the Black Panther, the film as a hero, and what, you know, Chadwick as a hero, what it meant for the comic book culture?
Well, you hit it right on the nail. Comic book culture is very picky. It's a very passionate fan base.
That's the word I was trying to look. That was what I was trying to look for.
They will let you know, especially now that we have social media, if they're not feeling something before it even comes out. I mean, look at the Sonic the Hedgehog movie. They initially released it, and everybody hated the way Sonic looked, and they had to change the date of the movie because the fans let them know. Comic book culture fans are very much like that. I think one thing Chad had in his favor, aside from being a fantastic actor who died so passionately into his work, is he had the Marvel Studios machine behind him. Marvel Studios, part of what has made them so successful is how much they lean on the comic books that these characters are inspired from, much more so than DC and Warner Brothers does with their heroes. And having that combination of a passionate actor like Chadwick, a director like Ryan Coogler who did the homework, and a producer like Dave Moore, who they knew they couldn't just come up with some, you know, let's just do it. No, there was a template and there was a formula that was established with this character in terms of what made him work, in terms of his relevance of being, you know, an African nation that had never been colonized, in terms of being one of the smartest people on the face of the earth, in terms of being the most technologically advanced. These were all things that they had to get in there or fans would have just went berserk, and they did a very good job of it.
We'll have much more of this amazing conversation for you when we come back. David, in terms of the comic book culture, you talk about how important comic books are, especially to kids and especially to getting ideas of what's possible, even though it may be imaginary for them. Give us an idea of what you think Black Panther, the comic book and the film are contributing, and the impact they're having, especially on young Black boys.
To start with the comic first, the comic was very important because of when it debuted. The Black Panther made its first appearance in 1966 in an issue of Fantastic Four, right in the middle of the civil rights movement in America, created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, two men who are not Black, but who realized that that type of representation was very important for superhero culture. So in that aspect, he's always been, from his inception, from the moment he first debuted in pop culture and comic books, he's always been a very relevant character with a lot of heavy historical context behind him. In terms of Chadwick's performance, what is so revolutionary about it is, other than, you know, Wesley Snipes being Blade, who really people don't give enough credit for, that was the first Marvel movie that let people know that these characters could work on film. But part of the reason Blade was able to get made is most people didn't know it was a comic book movie. Comic book movies had a taboo on them back then. But once they became successful, big money-making franchises, there was a clear lack of representation with the initial heroes that were presented, especially from Marvel Studios. The entire Avengers roster, other than the Incredible Hulk being green, and yes, you had Nick Fury, Sam Jackson, but he's kind of like the leader on the side. So everyone knew a Black Panther movie was coming once Marvel Studios movies became successful. And you have to put a huge relevance on the fact that, you know, in 2018, seeing Chadwick do the things that he did on the screen, wearing a superhero suit, taking off that mask and seeing his face, those things had a huge impact because they're things that I never saw when I was a kid who loved superhero movies growing up. So I saw it as an adult. I can only imagine watching that movie as an 8-year-old, as a 10-year-old, as a 12-year-old, and you can see it with the response since the passing of Chadwick was announced.
Yeah, my childhood included a duck by the name of Howard. That was my comic book representation of diversity kind of taking up that space. I think David brings up a lot of good points there when it comes to what's just available to the community to, everyone has their Batmans and Iron Mans and Supermans, you believe a man can fly. We need that access that looks like the people that are here in this country. And listen, and it goes obviously deeper than that. Like, obviously we fight for a lot of, Black representation, and I have half Black man myself, but the Latino representation in superheroes also has struggled a lot. We haven't seen that with Marvel yet, with the exception of Michael Pena as a sidekick to Ant-Man. We don't get a lot of that,
and we can do a lot better than that.
Yeah. We can continue to push the boundaries, and I have to commend Marvel for moving in that direction. But we always want them to move just a tad faster.
Chuck, in terms of what it means also to the representation of Black men to people who are not Black, to other cultures, to other races, to an international audience, especially with Black Panther, it's emphasizing qualities that we all know are here in reality, but are often not portrayed in the popular media or just in the whole media narrative. Speak to us about that.
Yeah, that's actually exactly what I was about to say. In 2016, when Civil War first dropped, and that's when we were introduced to the Black Panther in film, I casually went to Comic-Con in San Diego and wore a very casual cosplay of the Black Panther. And I thought I was kind of in disguise almost, just like no one's going to notice this, very low key. But lo and behold, this white woman, I should say, came up to me and just was like, my son wants to take a picture with you. Would you mind taking a picture? And I had I had this on, I had African medallion, it was like a jacket over top.
I asked you to put it on for the show.
Yeah, and her son really recognized that and was really excited about it. And I was shocked. I really was. And I was on a panel and we were talking about it then as well. But, it's not just Black kids and Black men that are affected and impacted by this. It's also people of other colors and races. Mm-hmm. And we have to remember that our sort of education system, our indoctrination, a lot of times Black people are seen as thugs, prostitutes, pimps.
Right. The negative stereotypes.
Exactly. So this was the exact opposite. It really showed the intelligence, the brilliance, also, some of the traditional superhero qualities that go with being a hero. And I think that's really important, that everyone is able to see the full breadth of what Black men and Black people have to offer.
I think one of the reasons people were so shocked by Chadwick Boseman's passing was that nobody really knew that he was sick. How different is that from the way that a lot of celebrities conduct their lives now?
Well, one thing I think we're learning as more news of this comes out, especially as we find out that so many people close to Chadwick who worked with him on movies didn't know as well. Chadwick was a very private person. He had a very tight inner circle. He was not flamboyant. He was not, there are a lot of celebrities that social media is a huge part of who they are. Chadwick was not that type of celebrity. He valued his privacy very much. I keep thinking back to a conversation I had with Ryan Coogler, the director of Black Panther, when he was here in Washington, D.C. for a screening. And we talked for almost an hour about the movie for a story I was working on. But, the publicity for that movie was huge. That cast, they traveled the world to promote that movie. And I could see in Ryan, just talking to him, how tired he was. Not that he wasn't excited, not that he wasn't proud of what he'd done, but you could tell this takes a lot of energy. This takes a lot. And thinking back to how I could see in just Ryan's mannerisms, speaking to him, how much energy that took out. It just makes me respect what Chad do that much more, knowing that not only was he sick the entire time that they were all going through that huge publicity tour, but that he kept it to himself.